the takeover of the embassy was also something that they'd been warned was going to happen. As you said, Carter predicted it. So was there any sense that maybe we should get out before that happened? I mean, when Carter's sitting there and realizing they have no answer to that, he then does nothing?
Yeah, it's bewildering. What is...
Now, you say he was preoccupied with other things.
At that point, he
and
was.
Also, you just don't want this to be the case, so you kind of don't want to believe it.
You know, it's funny, that 9-month period between the revolution succeeding and the hostage being taken over, between February and November of 1979, in some ways, in a lot of ways, the American government, the Carter administration, replicated the whole approach they had taken with the Shah's regime for 30 years before. It was this idea that, we're too important to Iran. They can't get rid of us altogether. I mean, the government might be a little more Islamic and stuff, but they need us, and we're too integrated with the Iranian economy. They need us. So everything's going to work out. And again and again, the people who came into the American embassy after the revolution were sending cables back, just as they had done under the Shah. They're sending cables back to the State Department saying things are going great. We're really sort of getting together with the new regime, and I think everything's going to work out fine. And once again, Michael Matrinko is, there's this wonderful story. I mean, wonderful in a tragic way. So Michael Matrinko, he's one of the few people after the revolution who's kept on at the American embassy. He's now a political affairs officer. And again, probably the only people in the administration, in the new embassy, who speaks Farsi. And he's going out and seeing this place is about to blow up, and it's getting more and more anti-American all the time. And this kind of facade of a parliamentary government that's been set in place, he sees as just a charade, that the real power is Khomeini. He is sending cables back to the State Department. And in late September of 79, about 6 weeks before the hostages are taken, he's back in Washington. He's going to go visit he's taking a brief vacation. He's going to go see his parents in Pennsylvania. And somebody in the State Department who's been reading his reports says, look, will you stay in the city you stay in Washington for another day? Because the reports I'm getting from you are completely different from what everything else we're getting. They're a lot more alarming. And I'd like you to sit down with the senior people, the policymaking people, and tell them what you're seeing. So Matrinko agrees to stay for another day. The next day, in the afternoon, they take over a conference room on the 7th floor of the State Department. Matrinko gets there a little bit early, and he's going through his notes. And a guy comes in and taps him on the shoulder and says, can I talk to you outside for a minute? And so Matrinko goes out, and it's a State Department security officer. And he says, this meeting has been given a security classification above the clearance you have to attend. And Matrinko, he insists politely. I don't believe this politely. Matrinko inquires. He says, do you realize this meeting has been called because of my reports from the field? And the security officer goes, yeah, doesn't matter. So Matrinko leaves. The meeting doesn't happen. Matrinko sees his parents. He goes back to Iran, and he ends up becoming one of the hostages. That's the piece that guy. I mean, and what happened? He did get released eventually after some pretty awful ordeal. I mean, they did not. Yeah. He did. The other thing on Matrinko is he had balls. I mean, he was talking back to them the whole way through. He was not taking any shit. Yeah, I have a funny story about that. So he was the missing hostage. He was the missing hostage, the lost hostage. So for a long time, there were 52 for 14 months, and for huge stretches of that, the American government had no idea where Matrinko was. Groups from the Red Cross,
because they moved him. At one point, they dispersed all of them, right?
Yes, after the failed rescue attempt. But for months, no one could find Matrinko. And so they assumed he was dead. And it turned out, because he spoke Farsi, first of all, they decided he was CIA. He was not CIA. But they separated him from everybody else. And Matrinko would blaspheme Khomeini in a scatological way. And so they'd lock him in a utility closet, chain him to a radiator for weeks, and they'd let him out, and he'd do the same thing again. And so they'd lock him back up. He spent most of that 14 months in a tiny little utility room in a building.
Why is this man not a national hero? Why?
I don't know.
Because that level of fuck youism is it's a great American virtue, and it was singularly lacking among so many others.